Okay, well, welcome back. And as the generations are advancing and technological change is advancing, I'm amplifying and being accelerated too. Look at this. How about that? It's a USB? USB. It has to be something with the bishops, doesn't it? No. Yeah, I mean, it just feels, okay, so I got to learn that, so if next cocktail party I go to, not that I go to many of them, but, I have something I can share that will impress people. Okay, so let me introduce you to some of my friends that are living now that are kind of in these generations, but they're all sitting out in my congregation. And I just want to say, these are not Dominican novices. You've seen those people around, haven't you? Your Christian Catholic, he's kind of out there, and he's kind of out there. He's hanging in there, but he's kind of more aligned with faith than he is really faith in general, than he is necessarily really knowing his Catholic faith. But he's eager. He wants to know. And then you've got your council Catholic, and he's a volunteer in the parish, and he's, your middle-aged guy you can always go to, you can count on to handle anything. And then you've got your catechism Catholic who's around, and boy, I tell you, you can throw the Baltimore Catechism at him, and he knows. Why are we here? Why are we made for? To know, love, and serve the Lord our God, and so, these people all are hungry. They're all spiritual consumers, even though they dress differently. Oh, look at my bad habit. See, I've got to grow technologically. Okay. You guys know this better than I do. Nothing frightens me more, appalls me more, saddens me more, angers me more than the current reputation of Catholic preaching. And we have ourselves to blame for it. My sister used to be Catholic. She was Eucharistic minister, but the preaching was so bad in the number of parishes in the area that she, what she would do is she'd come to Catholic Mass, and then she'd go down the street to get some good preaching from the Baptist. And then she eventually left altogether. So, I mean, and we know some of these, these common demons that contribute to stagnant preaching. Lack of exegetical preparation, poor delivery, failure to address social issues, or bringing the catechism, lack of connection to daily life. Because, it takes some time and thought. Or we haven't been listening to our people, so we really don't know what their daily life is. No weekly continuity, such an opportunity missed, right? Like somehow these are all, vignettes, separate vignettes, rather than something that hangs together in the lectionary. And lack of generational relevance, And that's what we're about today, looking at that. Anyone remember the 3 key elements in liturgical preaching? I'm putting you on the spot here. Well, who do you have to have there? The Word. Word's pretty important. The Word, the preacher, and the audience. Very good. Give that man a bozo button. The preacher, the Word, the gathered assembly. And we probably spend more time with the top 2, and we forget the others. We kind of take them for granted. They'll show up, and they'll get it because I get it. They'll get it because I understand my own homily, right? They'll all understand. I remember actually being in Kansas where I met one of my friends back there. Kansas? Benedictine? There you go. Wow, okay. At a Benedictine vocation fair. I had the Benedictines were right across from me. I had to lure the potential candidates over, tell them, leave the dark side, come to the light. We are the resurrection. But I remember when I was there at one point, there was some kind of a guest. I went to the local parish for a preaching that Sunday, and the young man who was preaching, a year out of seminary, runs into me after Mass and says, "Oh, Father, you're a Dominican order of preachers. Well, what did you think of my homily?" And I said, "Well, geez, it was theologically flawless. Too bad it was in a foreign language." And I said, I don't mean to be harsh, but you had great theology in there. But did you see the people you were talking to? You know, you had just about every generation present. But there were no illustrations that would pull in any of those younger generations. You know, and I even wondered about some of the working professionals. What was there that the baptism of Jesus might speak to them about what they deal with each day, at the office. Their perspective on how they're parenting their family and leading their family. So I said, now, you've got 2 masses left he had in the afternoon. If you had a break, I said, why don't you go back to that homily? Think about the people sitting out there, the different generations, and just bring in an image or a metaphor, a linguistic reference, something that will draw them in and let them know you know they're there. And they'll take that excellent theology with them out the door. Otherwise, they're going to go home and say, really smart guy up there today. Not quite sure what he said. Now, if we were all seminarians, we'd get it. So, anyway, it was one of those moments of I hope, real learning for him. I want to give you now basically the definition. Okay, multi-generational preaching. You saw that book back there. This is not multicultural, although multicultural is an important growing awareness we've had really in the last 30, 40 years. Very important. But when they first did a cover for this book, it was very interesting. They shared it to me. They were all excited. Now, these are really the smart people doing this, okay? They didn't even catch what the designer had done. There were 3 people, all different colors, about the same age. So even the designer thought multi-generational was multicultural. Now you notice we've got everyone, from the kids to the grand folks to the middle-agers. Multi-generational preaching is not multicultural. It's not multi-message. You'll lose people. You give them too many messages. We put forward one message. We come up with that focus statement, and we put that forward. And it's not multi-gimmick. It's not about gimmicks. It's not about entertaining or performing. What it is multi-symbolic. We're speaking to a lot of different symbols out there, cultural and ecclesial, for different age groups. It's multi-historical. A lot of different histories sitting in front of us. Multi-image. The current images our world is full of images. Started with MTV, which seems kind of quaint now. But imagine how people just deal with images every day. And then multilinguistic. Different words have different nuances. When my grandparents would hear the word sacrifice, having been through a depression and 2 world wars, I guarantee you they heard it differently than my younger brother growing up, who didn't have any real sense of sacrifice. But now the younger generations do have a reappropriation of it, especially those young adults who are now called the combat generation, because they spent from 18 to 30 in 2 major wars. Sacrifice is heard differently. You got to know the nuance of the words you're using before you just throw them out there. Now, here's some different mentalities. So again, a few of my friends here. In the 70s, kind of the cry was, my parents are fascist pigs. 1980s, my friends are sold-out hypocrites. They were all idealists until they wanted to make money. 1990s, my students are greedy materialists. My children will save us all. 2000, isn't that beautiful? Our helicopter moms and our Velcro dads. Helicopter moms, they hover over. Velcro dads, they stick to their kids. They now have end-of-the-day opening ceremonies at campuses to get the parents off the school property because they don't want to let their kid go because their kid may need them. So I wonder what it's going to be for 2010. What do you think? What would be kind of the rallying cry? My kids are back home. Excellent. Yeah, my kids are back home. We better save ourselves. My kids are back home. Somebody else said that 2010 could be computers will save us. We're looking for technology to save us. Not that it necessarily will, but that's kind of a mentality that's out there. Preaching from the viewpoint of the multi-generational preacher is a persuasive form of discourse. and again, you'll get this, actually at the end of this session, that ought to be structured and oriented. Okay, so it's a form of discourse, it's persuasive, but it's structured, and it's oriented. Some of the guys, when I do preaching practicum, say, oh, Father, I just like to get up and preach from my heart. I say, well, that's so beautiful. Makes me want to tear up for the people of God. People of God don't want your heart except behind an organized, disciplined text. That means you put some sweat and tears in it. That's where you can put your heart in. We don't put the Holy Spirit on the spot. You know, He doesn't like to be put on the spot. So structured and oriented to the preference of each generation's symbols and language. Now, it sounds like a tall order. But again, we'll show you a little bit how we're going to do that this afternoon. But the fact is, if you're really listening, which I don't know, I think that has something to do with pastoral ministry, right? If you're really engaged with people and you hear their world and you're touched by their world and you hear their images and languages and you're paying attention, which is what love and preaching are all about, then, you know, it's going to come to you pretty easily. Wow. I've really got the young kids today. They come to this Mass. I've got to bring in that symbol that's going to really make the difference for them. That's going to let them know I know what it's like to be out there trying to survive and negotiate, you know, security and acceptance and all those other things that they're put through at their age in high school. Or what language of theirs can I use to pull them in and let them know that Father's walking with them? That this gospel is alive for them and not just something we're taking from the dustbin of history. But this is a living gospel. A living gospel uses language today. How do I bring that forward? Okay, it's also a rhetorical system. You know, does anyone remember, you know, St. Augustine was the first author of the first homiletic text. You remember what he said, a good rhetorician, whether teaching, preaching? 3 things that good rhetoric does. I'm giving you guys a real shot here. Oh, there we go. Okay, once again, persuades. You got to speak up. I'm half deaf up here. Oh, you're close. Persuades. That's one of them. One of the 3 things. Every good piece and I always look at my preaching and it says, does it have these 3 things? Persuades. What else should a good homily do? Okay, persuades. But what's the first thing it should do? Do we want to get any Catholic doctrine or teaching in there at all? Catechize, educates. So persuades, educates, and Augustine says delights. Delights. And I like that because it's delightful to inspire, but delight is also about how it's crafted. I throw out some alliterations every now and then. I hope you notice. You know, we can delight in our speech. We can use a little poetry. We can use a little imagery. Because people walk away when they're delighted with the experience of that delight, and they remember. So something that persuades, there's belief, there's passion, okay? Something that educates. We're being responsible theologians. But something that also is shared in a way that delights with the word usage, you know, with the images. So a rhetorical system, that's where you got that influences and appeals. You're good, but somebody should be watching him. A rhetorical system through which the preacher persuades, influences, and appeals to others. Yeah, he's okay. So, what do we have here that might be persuasive in terms of bringing in to a homily? What do you see when you look at this list? I don't know how old you guys are, but it makes sense to you, huh? These are major defining cultural things that were going on at the time. And it's important to be aware of them. You know, Columbine still has a tremendous force. Now, war in Kosovo seems like nothing at this point with our other wars. But, you know, in someone's, you know, the Oklahoma City bombing, still a major traumatic thing for that generation. It's an identifier. It's a boundary. Fall of the Berlin Wall. Now, McGuire, we may have different feelings today than we had then. So intergenerational preaching occurs when the language of the preacher reflects the intentional interweaving. And I love the word intention. Life is all about intention. The why that we do things. And as priests, the why is all about what? What's our motivation? Love of the heart of Jesus, right? And wanting to be that heart for the world. We do it for the love of Christ. And attention. Attending is the what we're doing. We do what we're doing. We're attending to what we're doing. But what keeps us there in that chair, in that ascetical posture of working out that homily and giving it the attention it needs, is our intention. The love of Jesus, loving Jesus about feeding his sheep. So the intentional interweaving of cultural, religious, and linguistic symbols, fundamental to each generation's self-understanding. Okay? So it's a real work of art, but not hard. Artists get better and better. You, too, can become better. Okay? I'm not going to go all Norman Vincent Peale on you, positive mental attitude, but, you know, this is a craft. Michael Jordan didn't get to be where he was without lots of practice, but also without lots of passion and belief in the nobility of what he was doing and what he was bringing to that game. So nothing makes me crazier when I hear people say, well, it could take a lot of time, Father. Oh, geez, I guess I didn't know that was the most important value in your life. Anything worth doing will take time and effort and make you sweat. But it's worth it. Here's our working definition. And again, you'll get this. So preaching the gospel message in a culturally relevant and life-giving manner. And life-giving is not a throwaway hallmark word. Life-giving, we got to give people life. People walk away without life from our liturgies, from our preaching. We should just go hide. They need life. They're coming to us. They're showing up. They're going against a cultural conversation that says God isn't relevant anymore. And they're there. We got to give them life. So in a life-giving manner to the 4 or 5 generations comprising that assembly. Okay, through what? Generational images, metaphors, linguistic references. Okay, let's get into some of those. What do I mean by generational images? I'll give you one of my favorite ones. When I was training for my marathon, I was running along the lake in Chicago, and I thought I'd seen it all. You know, people's dress, what they're up to, you know, the different times of the day, the moods. Well, I'm running along, wondering what the heck I got myself into. I'm an old guy, could have a heart attack, you know. And all of a sudden, coming at me is this 20-something millennial on rollerblades, hooked up to the iPod, and texting on the smartphone, all at the same time. That's a generational image. I thought, oh, my God in heaven, how do they do that? You know? And oblivious to anything else, you know. The water, that little pond that we have there called the lake in Chicago, oblivious. The sunrise coming up, oblivious. But I'm sure it was spiritual music or the Psalms that she was listening to. Now, right behind her was another generational image of someone older. Okay? A lovely older couple. Her hand resting on his arm, and they're walking along, gazing at the water and the sunrise as it comes up, exploding in this festival of color. Now, do you get that the people of God are having 2 different experiences? And I need to reach both of those people. So those are 2 generational images. 2 kinds of mentalities that are out there that somehow my preaching's got to get through to. You guys want to offer any? What's a generational image that you often see? Maybe you don't even identify it as a generational image. It doesn't have to be your generation.
When I show up with my parish on Sunday, there's usually a van already there, and there's a soccer ball sticker on the rear window, and car seat, and it's the family with their kids and the soccer mom van.
Soccer mom family, yeah, right.
School bumper sticker. My child's an honor roll student.
Oh yeah, right, exactly right, yeah. They're into it. They're into the whole parenting gig has begun. They got to get everything set up. Yeah, exactly. And so that's an image that you got that crowd out there. You might want to bring that in. Somebody else, generational image. What's an older generational image? I didn't mean to look at you, Father. What's an older generational image here?
muscle cars in the 50s.
Yeah, sure. Muscle cars in the 50s. And you see older people often driving them, maybe trying to recapture something.
Father, it seems to me one of the images from maybe 30 years ago was the family table that has...
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Donald driving through.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then what's the opposite? What's been put in place? You look in on the family situation, and half of them are eating, half of them getting up, the TV's going, someone's on the phone, somebody's texting at the dinner table. Yeah, exactly. Powerful images that people get when you're making your points. Okay, generational metaphors. Listen to this and count them. This is, my father's a great correspondent with, again, is a kind of a generational thing. He writes letters. You get a letter from him, it's just beautiful. You know, he's got special stationery depending on how important it is, and even stationery, if any of the kids are in trouble, it's usually on a pink slip, and we know we're busted and we've got to report to the office, even at our ages. Here he's writing to an old friend. In the days when radio was king and TV a fledgling box of episodic white snow on the screen, when vinyl records were played on the phonograph, the music of the big bands, ballads of love and romantic longing, and one could hold someone special in their arms and glide around the dance floor with certain practiced step and experience the wonder of romance like no other. Filled with generational metaphors, huh? Well, again, say you're doing a men's retreat or a women's retreat for the seniors. Wonderful way to begin. You'll have them right there, and you'll send a message. I took the time to get to know your world. You know, where you draw in their images, their language, what's made a difference for them. Linguistic references. I kind of told you some earlier. You're with my niece Katie. I'll meet you online at 10 for an IM. But that's basically group speak for a particular generation. You know, it's a generational dialect. And you know, we have social dialects and regional dialects. You can tell how people speak. Okay. You know, where they're from. Maybe even on the socioeconomic level at times. Maybe at certain parts of the country. There's also generational dialects, right? Sure. We know. And especially our older generations are all too aware because ad nauseum, what do we have to listen to? What do I have to listen to in my vocations work? Sweet. Awesome. My bad. Or the ever popular, contemptuous, whatever. Right? Where did that all come from? Where'd you guys get that? Carl Hyacin, in one of his novels, in one of his novels, was his bodyguard hired to deal with this temperamental 20-something actress. And to rid her of her annoying linguistic references, which is driving him insane, every sweet, awesome, my bad, or whatever, is met with a cattle prod. He's found it to be very effective. I'm not recommending that here. But it seems to do the trick. But you see, my point is every day we're swimming in these images and metaphors and linguistic references. Every day we're swimming in them. And they're in our reading material. They're in our conversations. And now they're in film with the release of the social network. Right? So, this isn't hard work. It's smart work. There's a difference. It's attending to because of that intention and because we love our people. Multi-generational preaching is premised on 3 convictions. The first is that people listen, speak, and act from their generational identities. If you get that, it'll also help you in your counseling. Where are they coming from? Well, they're coming from their generational identities. That's how they speak, talk, act. That's how they think. Okay? The second is that generation is a subculture, like race or ethnicity. We have to see that. And the third is that we can, and we must preach effectively to multiple generations at the same time, in the same setting, if we communicate intergenerationally. In other words, if we're intentional about being generationally aware, when we put together our homilies. It's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And the challenge is to preach in such a way as to be heard by people of very different generations. If we're not willing to do that, we might as well just sit back down, because they're out there. In today's Babel of generational voices, multi-generational preaching is not a luxury, it's a necessity if we're to have any credibility as preachers. I shared a little bit of this with you earlier, the bishops. Authentic, credible preaching cannot occur today without substantial generational awareness. Understanding of language use common to each generation. And being sensitive to the cultural nuance of the words chosen. It requires the 3 L's. See now, isn't that impressive alliteration? Listening, learning, and lingering. The best pastors are those who linger. They know what's going on. They know what's going on in their parishes. To really listen, it's the greatest gift you can give anyone today. And we don't listen. We're all going past each other. But for a pastor, you can't possibly do your ministry without developing the skills of being a good and effective and holy listener. And to know that you got something to learn. We don't leave here having it all. We leave here having the foundation. But all of our life is continuing formation, because then the people, they teach us. We learn from them how to speak to them. We take what we've been given here, but we learn how to reach them by stepping into their worlds. So the specific challenge of today's preacher is what? Communicating our Catholic faith across the pre-Vatican II, Vatican II, and post-Vatican II generations in an age spanning landline owners and iPhone users. In a world serving up what? Twitter, tweet, and Lawrence Welk repeats. Every Saturday night at St. Pius. I don't know what it meant, but when I was named vocation director, they sent me to assisted living. I don't know what the ministry's going to do to me, and I'm still there 9 years later, so I live with all the guys in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And every Saturday night, Lawrence Welk comes on. It reminds them of their childhood. I have to admit, every now and then I found myself kind of taken up with Lawrence Welk, too, because we did that as kids. Sitting there, before the FBI, We live in a pluralistic, 24/7 media and social networking society where radio fans of Prairie Home Companions, Black Eyed Peas, and the Jonas Brothers sit side by side in our Sunday pew. That's the world, brothers. Yeah. We live in a reality TV society. Instant fame wonderland where a 15-year-old millennial plays brilliant Mozart on America's Got Talent. And when interviewed says, I needed to let my own contemporaries know there's other music out there besides Lady Gaga. It's a world of helicopter moms who want to hover over and those Velcro dads who want to stick to their kids. It's a world in which digital natives, many of you, teens and the preteens and those in their 20s and early 30s, for whom this technological age is a given, have to put up with us digital immigrants. If I could be so kind, Father. Hope he's never my provincial. I'll be in big trouble. But then there's that curious group that's seriously disoriented as well that we call digital aliens, like my father, who always loves to be up on the latest things. He's very helpful in my vocations work. He says, now, son, tell me more. Tell me more about this book face. It seems to be a very important thing, or I'll bet you can get some vocations on that new web thing that's called MeSpace. Why don't you check that out and see what that does for you? But he cannot get these. It's just all too fast for him, but God knows he's trying. But we really have this world of the natives, the immigrants, and really the seriously disturbed aliens who just try as they might, God love them. It's all going too fast for them. Culture is the medium we all swim in, said John Paul II. Culture is the medium we all swim in. There's no human life or living apart from culture. And the subculture of generation is the culture that the preacher steps into when he steps into that pulpit. And when he steps into that pulpit, he's got to step beyond what? His own generation. in order to reach the many. If he wants to be taken seriously, if he wants to be heard. That's the challenge. It's a new multipolar world where we have to face the challenge to explore new generational frontiers, to perhaps go where we've never gone before as preachers. That was for you techies. Trekkies. See? Digital immigrant here. What do I mean by multipolar? Well, you know, John Ellen, he has a new book out there on the future church, and he talks about multipolarism. And one of the things he says is, you know, centers of power sometimes have seriously shifted, you know, over time. You know, you kind of had one sole power that influenced the world, whether like the Roman Empire or the British Empire. You know, then more recently we saw how maybe there was tension between two powers, and it was only held together by a deterrent force between both with the Cold War. But today, what we have politically, economically, militarily, strategically, is really an arrangement where there's many different poles of power. It's a multipolar world. We may still be a superpower, but our, as you well know, with any of your reading, there's power bases everywhere. And look what's going on in Egypt, you know. So I often think that's what the preacher faces too, a multipolar system based on generation. And that's how you have to look at it. Just as a diplomat has to engage the world stage and deal with the needs and concerns and wants and fears of those before them, if we want to do real diplomacy, WikiLeaks has helped us see some of that. Then if we as preachers want to be able to do that, we've got to be sensitive to what is the different poles out there that are interacting. How do we interact with them? How are we on time, Father? 10 minutes? Okay, good. Okay, I want to stop at this point. Okay, I just want to open it up. We have 10 minutes left because we'll go to work this afternoon. And, you know, it's a contribution in these kind of things. Really, you give the whole group when you share. What's resonating with you? What has this made you think of? What examples, questions, comments? You know, we're all in this together as preachers. So what does this elicit for you? Or what do you want to add to it in terms of what you've seen from your own experience being out there preaching or, you know, being part of these preaching workshops?
Father, thanks for being here. I was going to say from my own experience that when preaching to multi-generational assemblies, one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that the young kids aren't going to necessarily be at the same place as the adults, and
right.
It's important to recognize that this summer, when the Traveling Bible School was in town, I tried to incorporate a little bit of humor in my homily, and I found that it failed miserably. The children had no idea that it was a joke, and so I was left standing there in awkward silence.
And you said, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. No, what we do when we get in an awkward situation.
Which really takes away from the humor of the joke. So, anyway,
yeah, I've been there.
If there could be any advice or assistance that helps us in preaching towards the youth, especially in youth masses or elementary school masses, but at the same time, I think that the adults, they enjoy that youth homily. They enjoy the youth homilies because they get something very practical, very fundamental that they can grasp. So,
yes,
I guess preaching to the youth is of such importance that I hope that we continue to discuss how that can be of assistance in multi-generational preaching.
Thank you for your contribution. And we're with you in the humiliation. We've probably all been there, or will be there, I assure you, at some point. I would say this, first of all, whenever I go preach in any context, I ask how many people are going to be there, all the other things you ask, and I always say, what generations am I dealing with? What age group? Well, young people, no. What age groups? Are these Spongebob, a Barney age group? you know, because SpongeBob has something to say. Or Dora, is this a Dora group? You know, Dora crackers, big deal. Some of these youngins, you know, or do I have someone that at least knows something about the Peanuts gang, you know? Talk about failing miserably with my own nieces and nephews in front of the whole extended family. You can imagine being a part of a family of 12. We get everyone together. Well, here's the intergenerational preachers going to give a great little homily. I referred to, you know, Pigpen, you know, Linus. I mean, come on. Didn't have a clue. They knew Snoopy and Charlie. And Lucy was kind of fuzzy. So it's, you know, of course, Charles Schultz has died now. And in a weird way, it's not as out there. So, again, those generations are very distinct. So I would just say you really have to do your homework in terms of if someone kind of gives you this nebulous answer, say, no, I really need to know what age groups I'm dealing with. And feel free to ask them, too, if it's a teacher or whatever, what have you been dealing with in classes? What are some of the, you know, images or stories or characters that speak to their world?
Better. One question I had is, once we grab their attention, we have to, recognizing that some would listen to Jonas Brothers, some would listen to Kenny G, some would listen to rock growing up.
People here listen to Kenny G? My God in heaven, I can't believe it. Okay.
I have 2 of his CDs.
Oh, do you? You do not have to identify yourself. Just see me later. No, go ahead.
Each of them is going to have this different worldview and stuff. But once we get their attention, we want them to have the proper worldview. Because someone who is seeing it through Bach, seeing it through dancing, seeing it through more and more Catholic worldviews, the person that can see the sun rising with glory to God is much better prepared to receive the gospel and to see it properly than the person who is skating, texting, that can't even see the world as it is.
Right.
So I guess once we've recognized, okay, there are multi-generations because they've all listened to different stories, they all have this different music in their head. I've heard adults say, I can't talk to my kids about their faith. And part of it is because of that. Part of it is because I think the kids haven't been prepared to receive the faith because of the songs they've been listening to, the things they've been doing. How do we take in that there are multi, how do we, I guess, make it one generation together? Is, I think, another challenge we have. We have these generations every 7 or so years, but I think, can we also use this homily as a time to span that gap again so they can speak to the faith? The 7-year-old can speak to the 80-year-old in one context, get that Catholic culture, that Catholic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because what's the thing that defines them all by being there? They're all Catholic. Now, sure, some of them have been dragged out of bed. We know that, pulled by their hair to get there. And they look about as happy as, you know. But the bottom line is, they are all there as members of the Catholic family. And what do we have as Catholics but a common menu of parochial menu of rituals, symbols, things that everyone knows about, images, symbols, so we can draw them in that way. But here's the thing. It's not that everyone has a world. It's not that there's one proper worldview. There is a Catholic worldview of our faith, yes. But the proper worldview for someone who's lived through the Kennedy and King assassinations, the chaos of Woodstock, you know, the Vietnam War is going to be different than someone who's lived through 9/11, or the economic tsunami, or someone who's lived through the Depression, 2 world wars. So, there's the proper worldview is the one they've been through. Now, how do we take that worldview and bring the Catholic consciousness to it, bring the Catholic faith and belief system to it? Well, one of those bridges is our Catholic sacramental imagination, okay, in which we bring them in and unite them by what does this mean as Catholics? Okay, to believe in the real presence, say, or, to believe in the cross. But, if I want to talk about the real presence, bring in the communion of the Trinity and the tight communion of the Trinity, and try to make a sense out of that. Well, if I'm dealing with a high school group of millennials, I'm going to bring in friendship, make a point about friendship, and how they attend to their friends and the different ways they communicate with their friends, because that's going to help them realize, what we're trying to say about the Trinity. You know, the kind of love and affection and joy. Well, that's the most important relationship in their world. So it's more in the examples you use. Okay? You take the worldviews, secular worldviews, and then you bring in, you know, our Catholic teaching, and you apply it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you, Father, for your presentation so far today.
Thank you.
John Paul II wrote an apostolic exhortation, Catechism Tradendae, in which he spoke about content and methodology. And I know probably a lot of us here have been hearing a lot with regard to methodology. And in that exhortation, he said that method must serve the content. And so I'm curious, as we speak about faith experiences and faith sharing in regards to this intergenerational homily approach, what would you say with regards to the overarching experience of the church as being itself intergenerational and about the intergenerational nature of Christ himself, which is the content that we're preaching?
You got to come again, my friend. I'm not sure what exactly you're asking.
There's been a movement over the past 40 years with regards to communicating our faith experiences.
Yes, I understand that.
And so I know that there's a tendency towards communicating, cooking on Christ to those experiences. I'm curious, we've been talking about how our experiences are what is objective. That's what we're supposed to be really propelling ourselves from, reaching out to people through their experience.
Mm-hmm.
However, in this modern world, our experience, while it may be a little different than, let's say, people in the 1700s, is still nevertheless the same experience of sin, concupiscence, and
Yes.
the church.
Yeah.
What is it about the experience of the church and of Christ, which itself is intergenerational?
Well, I would simply say this, that the first thing we do is we preach Christ crucified. You know, we preach the positive faith. We bring all that in, but we preach Christ crucified. So we bring our Catholic teaching to our preaching. This is a lens through which to look out at your people and draw them in. Okay? There is a universal experience of Catholicism. There is not a universal experience of technology or necessarily history or culture. That's the bridge we're trying to make our way over. History and culture, you know, socially. But the whole idea is to bring them together and unite them as Catholics, you know, in our Catholic faith. That's what we do share. We got to make those other bridges.